What is up, Watch fam? Happy Tuesday and welcome to In the Metal. I am Christian from Theo and Harris, and today we're going to be diving into 5 incredible vintage watches from Tudor and Rolex to Omega and some things that you've never heard of. So let's do it. Alright, well, this is usually the time in which I would do a wristwatch check what I am wearing, but since I have these 5 vintage watches in front of me, I have all of these watches that I'm wearing. So instead of doing one wristwatch check, we'll be doing 5 in depth. So let's dive into the newest additions to the watch shop at theoandharris.com. First, we have a beautiful vintage Omega Seamaster with the automatic winding 582 movement. I absolutely love this watch. I haven't been able to find one of these in a couple of months, and the last one that I did manage to find, I actually shipped off to Myanmar, to someone who's actually become a very good client and friend. What I love most about these vintage Omega Seamasters is this. Although they are completely isolating, I mean, these are some of the most dressy and formal watches Omega was making at this time, which its year of manufacture was 1964. But still, in context today, although yes, it definitely has a more formal feel, this watch is still very versatile. Here we have it on a black leather strap, which dresses it up, but throw this on a tan suede, for example, and you've got yourself a perfect watch that I really can't imagine a circumstance in which you couldn't wear it. I mean, maybe the beach, but apart from that, the beautiful sunburst dial, unobtrusive hands, and mint case, to me, just make for a, dare I say it, perfect vintage Omega. So needless to say, I am very proud to be offering this particular Seamaster in the watch shop at theoandharris.com. Moving on to another watch that I always can get excited about, a watch that I spend probably most of my time with throughout the course of a week. It's a Rolex 1601. It's a Datejust, but it's from 1961, so it's a very early 1601, and you can tell for a couple of reasons here. To someone like me, to someone who really does study this stuff very frequently, there are a couple things that pop right out immediately. The first, in my opinion, is the fluted bezel. Although not fundamentally dissimilar to the fluted bezels that you find in later Datejust 1601s and later Datejust as a whole, it's a little bit smaller, more intricate, and ultimately reminiscent of the designs from the 50s as opposed to what came in the 60s and 70s, which is what we're used to seeing. Further, I mean, beyond that, we have these incredible dolphin hands, which most often were from Datejust in the very early iterations. If you take a look at the 6 and 9 hour markers, they really remind me of like an arrowhead. Very complimentary to these dolphin hands. This watch to me is without question a winner. Although its nuances and details that differentiate it may not be obvious to everyone, in the world of vintage Rolex, it is exactly those nuances and details that makes it so special. Let's shift gears here and take a look at something very different. Actually, this vintage Movado, which really caught my eye the second I saw it. I absolutely fell in love with that texture on the dial. It's almost like an extreme sunburst. I mean, it catches so much light that it turns the obviously black dial into almost a chocolate brown, which of course is warmed even further by the gold dolphin hands and matching case. So yes, I do think that aesthetically this is a very slick and cool watch, but to me what is so much more important than the slick coolness of this watch is what it represents. This watch at its price point represents a perfect alternative to something like from Daniel Wellington or something from Michael Kors. It's from a brand with actual heritage. It's from a brand that has actual equity in the watch industry, you know, some notoriety on one level or another. Beyond that, whether you're a fan or not, that museum dial is an icon. In my opinion, I find it quite handsome. I think it would look incredibly classy beneath a cuff or with a sweater, or even more so a tuxedo. I mean, I really am aggressive on the opportunity this watch represents. And no, it's not a hot horology, crazy luxury watch. It's not an endgame watch, but it does what it does. I think it serves that purpose, and it serves it really well. So yes, to me, this is an absolute no-brainer. I'm very proud to be stocking in the watch shop at theoandharris.com. So let's move on to the next watch. Actually, another quartz watch. 2 quartz watches in 1 week, probably a first in Theo and Harris history. But let's get into it. It's a Zentra quartz, a watch that I've never heard of, and probably you haven't either. Why do I think so? Because the company probably had to, go out of business for stealing one of the most iconic, valued, respected designs in the entire watch industry. This design is stolen irrefutably from the Audemars Piguet Royal Oak. Yes, the Royal Oak has become an absolute icon for its supremacy of design. From case finishing and movement to dial, it's an absolute winner, objectively. I mean, it's actual material. But what's so interesting about it to me is the narrative. The Royal Oak is a wristwatch in history that changed the way people, the consumer base, viewed luxury. And I find that so interesting. The Royal Oak was the first luxury watch in steel prior to the Royal Oak, which really could have been a commercial disaster. I mean, it was for the first couple of years. If someone was going to spend money, real money on a luxury Swiss watch, they were looking for something that was of the old guard, something truly luxurious and rich. Yellow gold, platinum, things that were of obvious value. So to sell the world on the idea that a steel watch could be luxurious was unprecedented, and they did it. So to me, in wearing this Zentra quartz, it represents a couple of things. One, an opportunity to wear something that is basically a carbon copy of one of the most famous watches of all time without having to wear a fake. And two, to pay homage to a watch that is universally loved, admired, revered in every possible facet of the watch industry. So yes, I do like this Zentra quartz, and it's surprisingly well executed. From its very sturdy bracelet and its substantial overall heft to its charcoal waffle dial, I am really taken back by, honestly, how well this watch wears and how enjoyable it is on the wrist. So yes, I actually do love a watch called Zentra, believe it or not. Moving on to our last watch, our last new addition to the watch shop at theoandharris.com this week is a Tudor Prince Oyster Date. It dates to 1985, and it is one of the finest examples I have been able to source. It features a creamy white linen dial, a yellow gold bezel with matching hands, indices, shield, and crown, and I think it's absolutely breathtaking. If this watch said Rolex on the dial, it would be worth twice of what it is. So the fact that it is a Tudor, which is made by Rolex at the end of the day anyway, really represents so much value to consumers that it's impossible to ignore. I love Datejust. There's no question. Datejust is probably my favorite watch in the world, and this is a pretty damn good one. But for me, even though Tudor doesn't necessarily hold that same special place in my heart, because the Datejust was my first watch, as someone who's watching the market, it's like I said, it's literally impossible not to say, shit. You know, vintage Tudor is bringing, especially in intricate details, so much to each owner, and this watch 100% epitomizes that. And its overall sharp, crispy condition is just the cherry on top. So yes, if you couldn't tell already, I am very excited about this week's new listings. So just to recap, we've got an incredibly cool and truly surprisingly versatile Omega Seamaster from 1964, a very early Rolex reference 1601 with those rare Dauphine hands, the perfect alternative to an empty, cheap Daniel Wellington, a shockingly well-made ripoff of one of the most famous watches of all time, and truly one of the most valuable vintage Tudors I have ever been able to get my hands on. I've said it before and I'll say it again. It was my absolute pleasure to source these watches, just as it will be to answer your emails and to ship them off to their new geeky homes. Head on over to the watch shop at theoandharris.com and please shoot me an email if you have any questions.